Our speakers with us. Hello. Andrei, Elnur, Yelena, I'm so happy to see you. How cool that you are with us. Yes, I can also use my glass instead of the mic. Okay, we may try. Maybe it will be better. How are you? How are you doing? Are you ready? Wonderful. Who is gonna start? Me. Yelena, wow. No, 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 that's not you. Okay. Gentlemen. Can I suppress the echo somehow? Hold on a second, we'll get an answer from our technical assistants. Yes, we hear the echo, some echo, yes. Duplication of the sound. Okay, hold on a second, we'll try to fix it. Thank you very much. Who will be the pioneer? Andrei. Okay, yes, that will be me. Can you hear me well? Yes, excellent. Thank you very much. We would like to see your presentation on the screen. Please start sharing. Yes, hold on a second. The presentation will be there in a moment. Can you see it? Can you see the presentation? Yes, we can. Yes, it's on the screen. Hello once again. Dear participants of UTCAM, welcome everyone. My name is Andrei Ignatiev, and I represent the informal association of the Belarusian interpreters, Interzone. And on the first slide, you see the modern term Uberization. Uberization is the replacement of intermediates by digital platforms. And in our case, in our model, we are speaking about replacing the intermediates in Belarus. At the moment, we are not ready to replace them completely by the digital platforms. Maybe this is just a matter of future. At the moment, we are trying to structure the cooperation between the executives, and we distribute some administrative and managerial responsibilities, thus increasing the potential of the interpreters. We're trying to motivate the interpreters thus. I would like to tell you more about the model for interpreters, for simultaneous interpreters in particular. For simultaneous interpreters, this model can be even more relevant because it's difficult for simultaneous interpreters to get distracted in order to fulfill some additional functions, such as administrative function. I, as a person, keeping in touch with the customers, have to consult them during the coffee breaks, during the lunch break, for instance. I have to provide the clarification, and of course the situation is far from ideal. Translators, of course, they also have to concentrate on their work, but at some point of time they can easily provide the consultations. That's why this model will fit them. So traditionally, the Association of Interpreters was called Translation Agency. The idea is wonderful. The agency is looking for customers. It has ideally to support the interpreters, to provide the interpreters with a headset, for instance, if the interpreter goes online and something happens to his or her headset, then the agency can also find someone to replace the interpreter who falls sick. And of course, the agency guarantees the payment. If the customer refuses to pay, the translation agency is nonetheless obliged to make the payment. So this model looks ideal, but unfortunately, this situation is quite controversial, at least in Belarus. There are some adequate, I would say, agencies both in Ukraine and Belarus, and we know them, we work with them, but the vast majority of agencies are just chasing the profits. And what's unpleasant, they never guarantee the payment. In my practice, I've faced with the situations when the agencies have delays with the payment, explaining this by payment delays from the customer. In fact, this translation agency model was invented to ensure that the payment is made on time. Once had a situation that a big corporate customer did not effect the payment on time, and for this reason the agency refused to pay me on time. So it's nonsense, of course, it's nightmare. Besides that, the agencies also do not know properly how to work for the benefit of interpreters, how to ask for materials and so on. Quite recently, I had the case, I asked the agency to provide the materials, and at 10 p.m. I got the materials, the documents on alternative sources of energy, recuperation. There was a great deal of terms, and I had to study these presentations until 3 a.m. And at 9 a.m. next day, I found out that this material had no relation to the particular topic I was going to interpret. It was just the materials for general knowledge. So these are the problems resulting from miscommunication. And finally, if you get sick, you may ask your colleagues to replace you, you may ask your friend to replace you, but it's more difficult for the agency because the agency is motivated by some other triggers. So that's why I started considering the alternatives for the agencies. Having worked with them for a couple of years and having faced a number of difficulties, so I decided that there is an alternative. An alternative is a team of interpreters that share certain functions, the functions which are conventionally inherent to a translation agency. So these functions are on the screen. I'm not going to enlist them. I'll just say that the task, the assignment should be articulated really clearly. If the interpreter has to deal with the contracts, this task should be clear-cut, because it is not the main function of the interpreter. Interpreters are usually very capable people. They can cope with any assignment, but the objective, the goal should be set very clearly, because otherwise the questions may arise. In about 2015, we've come up with an idea to set up such a team. Initially, there were 10 of us, and the idea was to share the assignments. I think that all the colleagues know the situation when they have quite a lot of assignments. It is not possible to take anything else, but a good customer wants an interpreter. In this case, you should look for a replacement. You should offer this assignment to another colleague, but there is a certain risk. If you do not trust this person, if you do not know this person well, this colleague may overtake the customer, let's say. And there is another risk. You do not refer the customer to anyone else at the same time. You may lose the customer because you just deny your services. It's good to have a team where you enjoy trust, mutual trust. And it's a wonderful situation when you can easily refer the customers to each other. The customers may also be willing or not willing to work with certain interpreters for a big number of factors, personal factors, not related to professional qualities. And we have to explain the customers that sometimes some colleagues come just for replacement. And if the customer is willing to work particularly with this newcomer, you may let them cooperate, let them work together, but then you will get new assignments from the colleague your customer started cooperating with. So it's an exchange. It happens that the first in the pair starts administrating the project, getting 10% commission, and the second interpreter delivers the job, so to say. It was quite an interesting situation, but the project was massive, so the amounts were quite significant. It turned out to be quite interesting. Another thing to mention is that customers might need some additional services. So you have to close all the gaps. If something is left, you have to try and offer turnkey services. Therefore, our team covers all aspects of activity. We've got partners offering equipment for simultaneous interpretation. Then we've got partners offering equipment and devices for visualization. And we also decided to make so to say, coming out. We signed the contracts with certain hotels, and we started offering a full range of services, starting from taking the customer at the airport, bringing him or her to the hotel, and then providing services of interpretation. For this purpose, we of course need a group of interpreters. If such team is not available, then some difficulties might arise. Another question of fee. What are the fees for administration, for instance? We do not have any table of tariffs, but usually administration accounts for about 10 to 20% of the fee, of the general fee. At the moment, our team includes 8 members with main languages such as English, German, Chinese, and Polish, and we also have access to a pool of other languages interpreters. We also communicate and cooperate with the translators who translate the documents for our projects, and so on. So what are the principles of our team's work? First, mutual trust. Unless you've got trust, you even should not start cooperating. Then the next principle is professionalism. Of course, all team members should be professionals. And another important thing is discipline. So interpreters' priority should be the success of the project, and this success should prevail over the emotions and ambitions. The interpreters, the team members, should also be subordinate, so to say, and follow the instructions of the team coordinator. In my projects, my priority is working with interpreters I trust. So trust and discipline are 2 key priorities for me. They are even more important than professionalism. We used to have cases when interpreters were demonstrating high professional qualities, but at the same time they failed to come on time, or they got involved into some personal emotional interactions, conflicts during the breaks, and all this casts a shadow on his or her professional quality, because these violations of discipline are very evident, and the customers see this. The discipline is really important for all of us as adults. And unless we've cultivated this discipline from the very beginning, it would be nearly impossible to develop this quality later on. So what are the competitive benefits of such teamwork? First, low price of services, but for the customer, for the interpreter, this price can be even higher. Even though interpreters may not get higher price, the motivation is nonetheless higher because the interpreter participates in a project and provides the full range of services. Then the next benefit is timely handling of requests. This is the direct communication with the customers, and the customers are consulted in a proper way, and we have never faced situations of miscommunication. Such teamwork opens wide horizons for growth and cooperation. A couple of years ago, we launched a project Interforum by. It focuses on conferences, webinars, and other events. It was a turnkey project. This startup attracted some interest of Belarusian companies. Unfortunately, pandemic spoiled our intentions, and now the prospects of online events are quite vague. Nonetheless, we arrange hybrid events using the brand Interforum by. We arrange these online events, and this is quite a success story. Of course, we cannot cover all the needs of the customers. Let's say, in case of IT events, the customers wanted free halls with 2 cameras in each, additionally some mini events, additional events in the hallways, in the breakout rooms. But for this purpose, we cooperate with the partner Space Media by. So we cannot do everything on our own, but of course we can rely on a network of reliable partners. They would offer you their special price, and they would help you, they would facilitate you in coordinating your project. So this is really important. Such teamwork offers additional gains. I'll give you an example. You can watch our promotional video. We shot it at one of our events. Of course, when you work on site, you meet people representing various occupations, various companies. And you, if you represent a company yourself, it's easier to find the common language. You can easily agree about many projects, let's say. If possible, please launch this video. It's an example for us. At the moment, more and more customers prefer simultaneous interpretation. So simultaneous interpretation means that the interpreter speaks at the same time with the speaker. This enables us to reduce the time of the event and to save on organization or catering. We've been working in this field for 15 years. We've been providing these services on a high professional level. But what else do we do? High quality equipment for simultaneous interpretation, and we've got such equipment. If it's inappropriate equipment, then the listeners may miss the information, and this will have a negative impact on the event on the whole. We would need the soundproof booth, thus the interpreter won't bother the listeners in the hall. Then we need the special equipment for switching channels for interpretation, like Russian and English, and the interpreters can switch the channels themselves, and the listeners should not change the channels. We use infrared headsets for the listeners because they are more reliable and they ensure better quality of the sound. We also have the professionals for technical support because they can frequently distribute, they can fast distribute the headsets, and they can fix all the bugs during the event. So we offer turnkey services. The customer don't get distracted, and they get all the benefits of the events. So it's quite a simple promotion. Nonetheless, if it were a commercial project, we would have we would have made agreements with lots of companies, with video studio and personnel. But we shot this video during the event. Thus, we got a very interesting product, a very interesting bonus. And this is a lean approach, so to say. Thus, we can benefit from informal associations. Andrei, I'm not willing, of course, to interrupt you. Okay, that's all. I'm ready to pass the floor to Elnur. We will listen to representatives of different countries, and afterwards we will have half an hour after the lunch break. It's absolutely different in all the countries, and in Ukraine the situation is, of course, totally different, whereas also a special scene in our country. Okay, let's listen to the story from Azerbaijan.
So, good afternoon. I do hope that you can hear me quite clearly. Yes, we can hear pretty well. So, nicely. So, let's start. Good afternoon. I'm welcoming all the participants. I'm Elnur, and today I will talk about our company and how we have started very briefly and shortly who we are. So, I have a partner. His name is Ali. So, he is a main interpreter in this US company. I'm Ali, as I say, I'm a simultaneous interpreter with more than 15 years of the experience. So our company was founded in 2016. However, we have been working since 2018. We have our own clients, and mostly we are focusing on the simultaneous interpreting. But my colleague is doing consecutive interpreting, and this our unification association helped us to reinforce our advantages because many people are requesting translation, written translations, and some people are requesting conference interpreting. We have 7 people as our employees, 79 freelance interpreters. Our clients are 152. The number of words are 15 million, and our revenue turnover, we had our earn, but in 2016 we have 30,000, and in 2020 we have 220,000 turnover. It's quite good numbers. So now I'm going to tell how we actually managed to get there and why do we need to unite our efforts. The previous speaker did a very good job regarding that. Are there any alternatives for the agencies? Of course, there are different steps because there are cases when people do not know what it is. Maybe there are people who are not interpreters at all, or maybe they are simply mediators who simply want to make money without clear understanding what the sense of our business. So we actually managed these decisions through several following steps. First, regarding the number of interpreters here in Azerbaijan, we have very few interpreters, and in the UN list includes only 16 interpreters. Our country is a very small one, and but we have lots of events and conferences. However, the number of conference interpreters do not increase. We have the same people. We have very few simultaneous interpreters, a bit more consecutive, but quite a big number of Frisian interpreters. The next point is the quality. You know, it leaves a lot to be desired because it links to the education and dedication of our interpreters and interpreters as a whole. One of the major reasons why actually we are here where we are, it is our clients. Sometimes there is a kind of conspire thing, and all our clients actually appoint their events the same day, and we need to replace each other. Why do we have very often this situation? Because there's no coordination, and simply we don't have people who we can ask to go and to work. The first our point it is education. In Azerbaijan, there are no colleges which would focus on the education. And as I said, our education leaves a lot to be desired, because all our interpreters, they do not have proper education, and I should have that this number includes a lot good and qualitative interpreters, but all these people receive their knowledge, their learning themselves without specialized education, without any linguistic approach. But the next question, the redistribution of work, and I really do like the point mentioned in the previous presentation. Very often people are requesting immediately you, and they don't want someone else, and here there is a trust, and I'm going to tell you about it more on the next slide. And finance side, so the rates of the interpreters in A categories, they have the same rates. The difference only 15%, and we don't feel any significant differences. They have, a kind of agreement, which is that we don't want to make money on each other. So when we have a project, we can actually agree in advance. So sometimes we simply actually replace each other. Sometimes we have a reference fee, which means that I have recommend you, but in fact it means that you will not see your client again. What's the profit for the clients in all of that? Because it is very important to understand that simultaneous interpretation costs a lot, and there is a thing of this association and maintaining this quality. Then, if we manage to do that, then we will have the very balanced prices. We will have these norms and this diversification and local interpreters or others, because, for example, different clients cannot maintain the same level of prices. For example, international organizations pay in dollars, and now there is this devaluation and other things. We used to work with different types of clients, and the local clients cannot simply afford this level of price. So when interpreters do have this association, they can then discuss this range of prices, and then the scaling arguments can provide for good balance, and maybe to earn a bit less, but constantly. The second point, the profit for the clients, and it is our flexibility, because we can clearly select interpreters. Agencies do not understand the specifics, the sustainable or stable quality. We work in pairs, because of course we do have people who prefer to work alone, and I used to do that a lot. But in meantime, you do understand that it actually affects your health life, and you cannot earn all money on the earth. To provide the level of quality, you need to unite the interpreters of the high level of quality with the average level of the quality, to provide the latter stable development in his or her quality, because simultaneous interpreters are learning by doing their work. But when you enter a booth or online booth, only through practicing, you can maintain and increase your quality. There is also a case for force majeures. Sometimes people need to be replaced with other one, and sometimes there is kind of friendly issues, and agencies here fail you to do it because their argument is, if you need, just go and search for someone, and if you fail to do that, then your client is no longer your client. And as it sometimes can be like a peak in the season, you need to have this potential, the pool of people you are working, and to provide at least something. The next point, corporative approach. We have professional experts. They can communicate with clients, but again, agencies focus their efforts only on money. The quality takes the second place, unless they are actually was said that no way to do this anymore. So all our interpreters understand their no sound. This poor internet connection. So for me and for my client, first and foremost, the criteria for selection is the personal traits of character. So we need to trust that person. We have standard languages, Azerbaijani language, Russian. I speak English, Spanish. My colleague speaks Turkish. Other French, other colleagues speaks different languages, and so we have quite limited a number of languages. These are 8. So we actually are applicable or able to adaptate. So we have very few interpreters, so we do everything. Last time I interpreted on the honeycology topic because I got familiar with so many details, but I was forced to do that. I was forced to learn all these details, to get involved in all this literature. So this is the wrong type of things. But we don't have any rights for people. We have people who are specializing on different topics, on oil and nature gas. So all other interpreters are able to interpret in any topics. So the next criteria is the desire to study, and sometimes interpreters have very great overestimation, let's say, and there is a need to tell them you need to grow every day, and for that they need to understand that there are better interpreters. Lots of interpreters are not really ready to accept criticism. Sometimes it is a matter of envy. So first and foremost, there is a need for trust, a human trust, and sincere, honest relation based on the honesty, transparency, because they do help to grow. And the last point, and it is soft skills. So it is all about communication. Our previous speaker told that he actually put all his soul in his work, but during the conference maybe no one listened to him, or maybe he did a gesture, and maybe he started to argument with the client, trying to prove trying to prove that his client is not right because of his overestimation. There is a TV show where the main hero is very smart, and his mother said that okay, it is okay to be smart. It is all good if you are really a smart person, but there is no need to show that everyone. So soft skills, communication skills, they are important. And the last slide I would like to draw attention, and there are issues and challenges. So, as I said, there is a willingness and complaints by clients that I do want these particular interpreters. You are trying to explain him, he's not available, let's try the other one. But the client's point here is he has this type of voice and other peculiarities, and here I need to explain that we have 5 interpreters and other things, and sometimes we need to send the interpreters the client once, and then we simply replace him with other one, explaining that there is a situation, the person cannot actually interpret for you, but he managed to come because you actually wanted to. Next things, there are complaints of the clients. Some as, oh my God, I don't like him, I don't like his voice, his pace of speaking. And if it is grounded, then we try to communicate, to negotiate, and it depends on the interpreters and other things. The next thing is strike breakers. It seems that we have an agreement. It seems to us that everything is going to be good in terms of money, financing, and other things, and then it turns out that, I'm sorry, I have $1,000 per day, and this interpreter actually run away. And we have, unfortunately, these people because on the market, and they actually are quickly approaching to the end of their career. And these people do exist, and we need to communicate with them, to tell them the truth. But here the first advice is to avoid them. And here the next point is the interpreters' turnover. Very beginners are actually not very available. We do have very so-called old interpreters who actually managed to find staff interpreters, and it used to be in USSR, and these people worked during this period of times, and these people do know a lot of things, but the number of people limits very quickly. Many people actually going abroad, and random people, these are people who actually look at this profession as temporary, random things, and here it doesn't mean a lot are they temporary or not. So they try to make additional money, and it is a bad thing indeed, because the level is increasing, and our profession is going diminished, and many interpreters do receive respect, but it is the other way around for the translators. We have Google Translate, and we cannot avoid it, and many our clients do things that they can manage without us. Education, which does not reflect the reality. We are forced to receive education ourselves. And the last point here, who are you going to be? And here's about the respect. We do need to respect ourselves. Many people think that this profession will exist or will actually die. And when we manage to understand that matter of respect, then we will not have people who are going to say, "I'm sorry, I'm so ashamed that I'm an interpreter." So here's the thing. And no, it's a brilliant presentation. We had our auditory keep laughing. We do want to communicate, and you know that we want to see you more frequently. So now the floor is given to Elena, and after we will start our negotiation.
Hi, how are you? It's very nice to be the final speaker. As I checked the credentials of the previous speakers, I realized that I cannot add much to their contributions. The previous speakers might have more experience in their field. However, I have analyzed their situation and our own situation, and I would like to add one more piece of the puzzle. My name is Elena Chudnovskaya, and generally I'm an expert. I specialize rather in organization of events with interpreting. I also specialize in inclusion rather than on professional associations, so I'm quite knowledgeable on in this topic. So actually, due to the topic of inclusion, at some point of time, I started thinking of the professional associations, of going beyond the boundaries of the of the translation agencies. At some point of time, I got requests from the customers to help and arrange the events for people with disabilities and with the participation of people with disabilities. I found out that the translation agencies do not always know the specifics of such events. Therefore, I decided to undertake the recruitment of the staff. This started in 2017, and back then I started elaborating certain rules of my professional activity. I focused on certain points I could be guided by as interpreter, as people I invite. Due to this guidance, our events should be successful, and our customers will be satisfied with the services we provide. We will help them to cover their needs. At that time, I realized the importance of trust. It has the paramount importance, and the knowledge in the topic ranks too, I would say, in this list of priorities. The person should be knowledgeable, and the person should be somehow related to the topic. The topic of inclusion is very broad, however, not too many professionals are involved, in spite of the fact that our country is huge. Well, sorry, I will be quite chaotic in my speech because I have some speaking points. I'll be jumping from one to another. So then I read a book, Antifragility, by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And I realized that those who try to set up small groups, informal associations, They are aiming at gaining trust, and in spite of their seeming instability, they are quite more stable, in fact, and the transfer of knowledge goes easier than within a big company in the corporate environment, because the big companies mainly focus on profits, and they would like to survive as big corporations. And of course, this requires huge investments, big deal of resources, including the organization and administration. So we, as a small group, may focus on small development, on self-development, and we can learn the business of those we are working for. Thus, we can achieve greater stability, and we can resist such black swans as pandemic, which is being mentioned all the time here. Many small group members are quite adaptable, and they went to another track quite quickly. They started teaching not only themselves but also their customers, and this client-orientedness is a really attractive feature. It's attractive for the customers. At the same time, we see that customers do pay tribute to such small mobile groups that are ready to listen to them, that are here and at the right moment, that they are ready to cover their current needs. Of course, we face with a big number of challenges as a group, and I face with challenges as the organizer of such interpreters groups. I'm not a translation agency director. I do not have personal experience in marketing. I do not have management background, and I have to learn by doing. And just like my colleagues, they have to read the books, they have to read the materials, and put these materials in practice immediately. But I'm not alone, of course. There are other groups. I cannot give names to these groups because the country is really huge. Well, we are separated by huge distances, like 5,000 kilometers, and these centers of services are quite remote. They can be quite remote, and every region is characterized by its own specifics. The needs and the demands are totally different depending on the region. There are some organizations that are quite aggressive in offering their services, and all the rest should stick perhaps to their topics, to their regions, to work locally. And it's not a bad thing, I would say. I know some groups of interpreters working mainly in Moscow. They work at the international level. They call themselves Omnika. They specialize in medicine. In our region, for instance, we felt the lack in Ural and in Siberia, South Ural. This is a big region, quite a big region, with quite a limited number of centers where the events can be held. And our events are mainly focused on some special topics like heavy industry. That's what we are doing in the region. In Yekaterinburg, in Sverdlovsk Oblast, for instance, there is a need for events dedicated to inclusive communities. because such communities will incorporate not only with the local authorities but also international organizations in order to scale up the experience, to multiply this experience to other regions and, if possible, to other countries. So this is the specifics of our region, and such peculiarities of the regions also make their impact on our activity. On the one hand, online modus operandi broadens our opportunities. On the other hand, we are not sure whether we would like to cover the entire market, whether we would like to cover the full range of topics, or perhaps it would be desirable to specialize in some topic, while other groups might focus on the needs relevant for their regions. So this is a diversity. At the same time, we can exchange experience during some conferences, during the events. So this is the biodiversity, as I would call it. This is the prerequisite for the system stability. The system representing various players that focus on various goals. Lena, I'm sorry, I'm here. Is my time running out? Well, actually, that's what I was going to ask. You mentioned regions, you mentioned questions. Maybe the panelists have questions to each other. Maybe you've got some questions addressed to other speakers. You would like to ask them first prior to our questions from our audience. By the way, I have spent just 9 minutes speaking, unlike other speakers, other panelists. Actually, that's what I was going to clarify. I would like to tell you more about one more challenge. So while you were listening to me, you asked about organizational forms. You said that you heard about the temporary creative team for the first time. I started investigating, exploring this issue. And we, for instance, signed contracts as the temporary creative team. I studied the legislation and I found out that such organizational form is not reflected in the legislation. At the same time, such self-made creative organizations are allowed. They can give themselves names and structure their activity, and of course they are eligible to sign contracts. The temporary leader of such organization bears all the responsibility for organization, for distribution of responsibilities, searching for materials. So we distribute responsibilities such as making up glossaries or studying the technical side of the issue, including the installation of the booths. So such organizational form does not exist officially. At the same time, it proved to be highly efficient. Maybe in my country, at least it's worth working on more vivid manifestations of these forms. Could you tell us more about this? How many of you started working in such a form? How did you recruit the team members? What were the benefits? What were the disadvantages of such organizational form? Well, actually, we worked on the same principles as mentioned by the previous speakers. But the guys, you know that somewhere there are people who are interested in the same topic as you. Maybe you met these people on social media, you follow up them on social media, you know what's close to their heart, and you start the cooperation, you distribute the responsibilities, And someone is in charge of communication with the customers. Because, for instance, you may ask for presentations, and on the other hand, you may explain that the presentations usually provided by the customers are full of pictures, and we do not need these pictures. So you better take the speaking points, get the speaking points from the speakers, and this will be much more helpful. This is one of the issues. So mainly you are based on general principles and common values. Yes, in case of inclusion events, that's our situation, because otherwise it would be impossible, I believe. So our cooperation started on the basis of personal motivation and aspirations of people. Okay, thank you. Maybe it's time to start discussion. Andrei and Elnur, do you have any questions to each other? Maybe you would like to learn more about situation in your countries. Well, we have to consider questions. At the moment, it seems there are no questions, but maybe we've got the questions from our audience. Do we have any questions? Yes, we do. Hello, dear colleagues. Welcome. Thank you very much for your insightful presentations. A question to Andriy and Yelena. Could you please tell us more about the organizational structure within your groups? Because Andriy has mentioned discipline. So who is in charge of maintaining this discipline? Who makes decision? Who is the decision maker in your group? And do you have any specialized person in charge of HR, human resources, recruitment of interpreters, of contractors, and so on? Thank you. Well, let me answer this question. Our group is not huge, so generally it's not a very big deal. We've got 10 persons on team. There is a guy in charge of the technical side, such as equipment for simultaneous interpretation. So by default, this person makes all the decisions related to the equipment. Personally, I am involved in administrative processes from the very beginning. Our group is not big, that's why the structure is not rigid. There is just someone who coordinates a particular project. This is usually a project lead of a particular project. And this person coordinates all the processes and takes into consideration all the aspects. Based on my experience, I know another group. I won't give you the name of this group. But in my practice, I met this group guided by a very rigid code of behaviors, so to say, and they have very strict rules. In my opinion, this works quite well. However, this group is not big as well. At the same time, they can enjoy certain benefits. In our group, the structure is not that stringent. Hopefully, we have answered your question, Anna. Do you have any other questions to the panelists? Yes, there are questions.
Hello. Nice to meet you. It was very insightful what you told us about your organizations. I'm Patricia. I'm an interpreter, among others. And I also am part of such an informal organization called GRAI in Romania, the northern part. And I have a question for Andrei. For Interzone, I'm curious, is it beneficial to have your own equipment? If I understood well, you have a booth, right? Or booths that you can propose to your clients for their interpreting events. And isn't it, I don't know, more beneficial to simply collaborate with technical companies that would offer such equipment and such booth? Because we asked ourselves such a question. We have rather a DIY equipment, so no booths. Thank you. I don't know if that was clear. Thank you, Andrei.
Question. In fact, I agree that a group of interpreters cannot cover all the needs of the event on its own. For this purpose, as I have mentioned, we've got the partners. They help us with very complicated events, with hybrid events involving big number of cameras and other types of equipment. There are customers, there are partners who help us with the promotion, for instance. But since our core activity is simultaneous interpretation, it's better for us to have our own equipment. It's worth buying because there are not too many providers in the country and they are trying to monopolize the market. If you do not have your own equipment, you can fall into this trap. You can become dependent on these providers. You can get the catering or cameras from a big deal of providers, while the simultaneous interpretation equipment is provided by only 3 companies in Belarus. And they cannot offer more than 300 headsets, but we have 700 headsets, so we can actually arrange any size of the event. So for us, it's a good option. Okay, Elnur, what's your situation with equipment? Do you have your own equipment or do you take it on lease? Well, actually, we have a supplier, a very reliable supplier. This company has never let us down. It's very expensive to procure our own equipment. I was going actually to procure the equipment before the pandemic, but thanks God I did not do this. Because it's quite expensive. We have the reliable providers.
So only 5 contractors providers for the big Azerbaijan. So the question to all panelists, what's your opinion on this form of this situation? Because now we do have only online. How did it help you to withstand the difficulties? So let me voice my ideas on that. As it used to help, it is also helpful now, because now it is very useful in terms of this changing landscape, changing our clients, changing landscape of our clients, and the ways how we get them who actually request our services. We continue to invite partners to events. We continue to communicate ideas on how we can improve what are the requirements of the climate. So we are quickly growing to the flexible and we are very adaptive to these changing conditions. Andrea, Nora, what's your case? So the big companies have experienced this pandemic very badly, because it turned out that we have to wait simply. There are companies in Belarus with a big number of employees, and there is a need for them to pay their salaries, and it was much more difficult to survive, to get through these difficult times. But as I see it, this organization is much more adaptive to such, situations. Thank you, Eleanor. What's your case? Because as I've understood this, you have been established during the Aldemir, or have I lost Eleanor? I'm so sorry, because he's so an inspirational speaker. Oh, we managed to find him again. So, Eleanor, the question was, how this form of organization help you to withstand this difficult time. And it seems to be that you have founded your organization, and it was last year mainly. We can't hear speaker. We can't hear you, unfortunately. And but is it on our side? Is it on your side? We can't hear you still. So then we can continue our communication after lunchtime, and it is going to be at 1500 Kyiv time, and we are working on the very small closed groups, and the information does not leak anywhere, but it is much more comfortable for us. And if you do have question, I will try to make assumptions. I don't have any exact data on that. And then we can meet at 3 p.m. because then there is a lunch in our schedule. We do have that, and we'll have a stable internet connection. So thank you all our participants for sharing your experience.
So hello again, we are back after our dinner, and now we want to have the panel discussion as related to the Association of the Interpreters. What about the sound? Sound check, please. Yes, we can hear you. We have 2 questions from the online. In case you have more questions, please send them to me in the messenger. The first question is from Maxim Kozub, a very logical question, which I also had when I started this, considering this topic, as related to the legal responsibility in case something goes wrong. Maxim has already made a phone call. We talked to him. Can you hear me? Yes, that looks like Maxim. I want to say that I have already rehearsed the conversation, so I want to... I'm shown both ways, here and there. I would like to hear Vika for me not to talk to myself. Can you show the second screen? Thank you. I want to make 2 examples. Yes, I have considered this question, and I have considered it for quite a long time. Since the point you went to have a dinner, I had enough time to think about. I have previously mentioned it a bit that some temporary difficulties that the association might have, they might have their legal regulations. The customers who I worked with, most likely they make agreement with me, they trust me, and later on we can agree on these matters. They do trust me. These are very good customers. Not very clear why they understand me, but there have been 2 cases. One of the universities who made agreement with us as the association, as the collective, he signed the agreement with all the participants, with all the members of the team. In this case, I was the leader of the team with the corresponding authorities. But based on the fact that it is not a formal type of organization, which was actually made up by myself. All the team members were signing this agreement, and they all had their pays on their accounts. It was quite obvious who was responsible for what type of activity. The leader, of course, takes the biggest portion of responsibility, but apart from that, each team member also takes some responsibility. The second organizational form, which wasn't mentioned but I have read through very thoroughly, but nobody knows much about it, and nobody uses it very often. This is well known as the association, as a cooperative, based on the documents of the Russian Federation legislation. We have these are the similar notions: the cooperative and the association. So this cooperative, based on the fact that it is fully regulated by the legislation, it presupposes the distribution of authority. Apart from that, it should be mentioned that it is based on the Article 6 of the Russian Federation Code. I have quoted it previously, don't want to waste time on that. You can just look at this. The responsibility is subsidiary. Not sure what it means, but if we take a look at that, we can figure out. And the third example, the third point, we can consider the notion of cooperative, even though many of us might think that cooperative is something providing the services. But I want to consider this once again. I'm too happy to see you. We are also happy to see you. I can feel it. And the third point, last year I was selecting the team members for our team and was responsible for the multiple functions in the team working at the conference of very prominent lawyers, and they were making the agreement based on their own vision. As far as these are the lawyers, I do trust them. While making agreement with me, they made an application or the annex to this agreement with pointing out the names, last names, passport data of all the team members. I was the main responsible person, but in case something would go wrong, I wouldn't be the only responsible person bearing all the responsibility. So in case it would go to court, the customer would have a deal with all of you. Not sure if that is this way. Everything is legally regulated. The agreement presupposes all the items. In case something is not presupposed in the agreement, we have the legislation. In my country, the pre-trial regulation procedures also matter. Not sure that things would go too far to be in court. If you allow me, the responsibility is borne by the company because we are the contractors. We signed the contract, but prior to this stage, at least if we are talking about country from the position of the power, we do not have the very great number of the simultaneous interpreters, and we are privileged to choose the customers, not only being chosen by them. The higher your professional level, the easier it is for you to discuss the conditions, to agree upon them. Of course, there is a responsibility, but the person who puts his signature on this agreement, on any agreement, so this person is responsible.
Я когда пытался прописать все в контракт, сказать, ох, вы так не работаете. Он в итоге устали, и он мне сказал, ты хочешь как по контракту или по-человечески? Я говорю, слушай, забей, Саша, давай по-человечески. И все, и так мы и решили как-то работать. И в итоге все у нас было нормально.
everything was quite okay. I do understand that there might be force majeure circumstances, there might be some incidents, and we need to communicate properly. We have the blacklists. Most likely, the cases don't go directly to court. In case it might happen, we can always agree upon. And it's a very, very rare situation. I remember only one case when it was about the sums of money somebody was owing us, and it was the only case. So important, of course, is to choose the customer properly. Andrei, what is your opinion? Yes, I do agree with the colleagues. They have told everything practically as related to this matter. I would only like to add that the main task is to provide the client with what he wants, to provide the high-quality services in case something goes wrong. There is also an agreement. Of course, it's better to avoid the fines, and we need to avoid it in many cases. So what could be the matters, what could be the challenges? The challenges might relate to the services, to the quality of services. But sometimes it is quite possible that the customer doesn't want to pay. We are all human beings, we all can make mistakes, and sometimes they may find faults with every little drawback, every little mistake. So in this case, it's better to discuss everything with the client. All the participants of the project are ready to share responsibility. So to say, if the client paid only half of the previously agreed sum, we need to come forward with this. Very sad to hear, but that is our reality. One more question for our auditorium. Hello, thank you for sharing your experience with us. The question is in the context of responsibility. Do you make any steps as related to the introduction of translator-interpreter insurance? Thank you. This is a very good question. As far as I did not study it thoroughly, I think anyway it should be considered. Everything is quite possible. Due to the fact that all the regulating instruments are being developed, this should be developed as well. So what about the stage of the insurance of the interpreters? It's not so widely discussed. We do not have them so actively discussed. In Baku, in my country, we do not consider it as relates to responsibility. If it is some very serious agreement, there might be some definite limitations on what should be done, what should not be used. I had one case when I was invited to do the translation of one surgery. Something was supposed to be cut off. In case I translated something wrong, somebody might be without some limb. That is very serious. I'm not sure that the law regulates it, but that is a more ethical question rather than the criminal. In my country, everything on this base level In Belarus, the market is not so wide, is not so huge. Everything is based on mutual trust, on mutual agreements. I understand in Russia the market is more complicated, but we have the initial stage only. Another question from online, from Natalia Fedorenkova. She was asking about one of Ukrainian groups, and the participant of one of these groups, Natalia Slipenko, agreed to share her experience. Thank you, Vika, and thank you, Natalia, for the question. Our group is rather informal. We do not have so formalized unions, so formalized associations, which you have just been discussing. I am the member of the group together with Galina. What is about our association, about our union? The basis of our union is the mutual trust, mutual support. We know the level of each other. We know the style of our work, the topics, the topicality, and in what cases we can totally trust each other. As relates to the questions of ethics, which will be discussed and have already been discussed, this is not the issue. We do know we can discuss them among ourselves. We know nobody will take anybody's client or be offended with anyone if something goes wrong. We can always solve and resolve the challenges. We do try to find some common solutions. The solutions for resolving the conflict situations and our informal community, informal association, that is most for sharing the experience. This is the approach based on finding solutions. As far as I understand, you have your own clients. Yes, we do. This is something like the organization, which is not a very close, not very tight union. It's because there are not many of you. In case there were more than 5 and 6, the organization would be quite different. It means you are very kind in Ukraine and good and nice. Another question from our auditorium. Hello. To continue the question, to continue the discussion which we are talking about, is there any distribution between the clients, between the contact information? Are there personal contacts, personal clients, or you share everything, including this information? Most likely, every interpreter might have own clients. We do not have some obligation to share everything totally. There are some clients the association works comprehensively with. Most likely those are the interpreters. One person cannot solve the problem, cannot solve the work on himself or on herself. So we need to be united in this case. Same is here. We do have personal contacts. We have the mutual contacts. As a rule, there are common topicality we are working on, and there are some clients that require a definite number of people to support the activity, to support the translation interpretation. There are defined number of topicalities that people prefer. we cannot unite, we cannot make the association based only on the topics. There may be different versions, different points for the groups to be united. In case the client says, I want to choose this or that translator interpreter, this is the precondition of the stable, sustainable work. We have a similar situation. There is not definite obligation to share the clients, to share the customers, but we try to encourage this. We try to encourage this because in case there are some force majeure circumstances, an interpreter may not be available. In this case, the support of other interpreters might be required. Of course, we take into account the confidentiality points. We do try to share the information, but of course, all of us individually might have own clients. I want to develop this question more. In case you have a new, very interesting tender, what about a corporate ethics? Do you try to win the tender as a group, as an association, or it is possible to try to win the tender individually? Is it normal? Is it within the limits of the ethics? It's a very complicated question. On the one hand, it is important not to make other people offended. On the other hand, in case you work within the group, you have good relations within it, then it's not an issue. But most likely we work together as a united team, as a joint team. We know several of such agencies, but the difference from them is that we provide the translator-interpreter services, and we also know our values. In case somebody wants to win the tender, we have such a tip. We try to win the tender as a joint group, and somebody may try to do it additionally by the agreement with regarding the price of previous agreement, which is not very legal. But we try to be very transparent without hiding any information. In many tenders, in case your name is indicated in the two companies list, you may be disqualified. That is why we try to win the tender as the team, as the joint association. Is there anybody else who wants to respond? Due to the fact that we are not the team, a joint team working together on a regular basis, we do not we do not track all the tenders, all the existing tenders, but sometimes I can disclose the names of the team members in case I want to win this or that tender. On the whole, I do not control all the market. I do not know the cases which might occur. Our association is most likely for the translators rather than translators are for the association. They can use our association as the instrument to implement their ideas to try to win the tender. That is for their comfort, for them to be able to use our association to represent them in winning tenders. Thank you. Any questions? If you allow, I want to add some information on tender documents. In fact, that is very good for the translator-interpreter. You need to explain the translator-interpreters that you that together you are stronger. And the question is whether you are stronger separated or working jointly. Yes, I totally agree. This should be the translator's vision that he can win working jointly. I want to ask a question. What are the tender winning criteria? Is it price-based, or there are some additional criteria based on the qualifications of the interpreters? I want to give an answer. Natalia wants to give an answer as well. My personal impression is that it's totally based on price. What I can tell from my experience, from my impression, is that that is, of course, pricing of what is indicated. The tenders I have faced with, something is wrong with the echo. I have some difficulties hearing myself in my own earphones twice. The tenders I used to work with, the price is not the only factor, not the only thing everything is based on, but in many cases, in many countries, that is like this. I want to add that the legislation of Ukraine doesn't presuppose the criteria based on price. But it is quite possible to use them. Of course, price can be the important matter, and the problem is that many customers cannot use this criteria properly, or they do not know how to use it. Is there anybody else? Our procurement, state procurement, the price is factor number 1, and factor number 2, that is connection, of course. Sometimes if the question writes a request, he doesn't know exactly what is so important is to allow him to write out the pricing properly. You know, the state procurement is not a very clear and transparent thing. We can see that that is not properly developed. Some technical issues? Most likely they want to tell about the state procurement as well. Not sure about other states, but what I can tell from my experience, that is not the state procurement only. I have seen some information on state procurement, and I didn't want to get deep into that matter. Elnur, you're back with us. Perfect. There were some allies trying to join us, our conversation, but they did not succeed in that. State procurement, that is quite complicated, hard, sometimes not very transparent and dirty. I try to work with international organizations, entities. They value your name, your portfolio. I think you know it. Yes, Sam is here. Thank you very much for such a fruitful discussion. It was a very good conversation. I do have more questions than answers, but it means that we will have it discussed more. It was important to hear such words as trust. Please applaud to our panelists, to our presenters. It was very interesting, especially in terms of the differences in the countries existing. Thanks a lot and have a good day.